Well, hey, everybody, welcome back to Get in the Game podcast. I'm your host, Scott Linebrink, where we talk about what it means to get off the sidelines and get in the game of your faith. It's exciting conversations with pro athletes and public figures. And today we have a really exciting interview with a guy named Mike Flynt. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hi, Scott. Thank you for having me.
You bet. It's always a pleasure to have a native Texan on the show. And you are from Odessa, Texas, where you played at Permian High School back in 1966. You were a starting defensive back on the 1965 state championship football team in that storied program that became the story behind Friday Night Lights.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah.
we all know about Friday Night Lights and how big football is in West Texas. But after that, you went to Sul Ross University out in West Texas on a football scholarship and got your degree in physical education and business, and then went on to work in the field of strength and conditioning at places like University of Oregon and Texas A&M. But then your story gets really interesting, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So tell it. This is I'm gonna tee it up a little bit, and then I
Okay.
want you to tell us the story. But at age 59, Mike returned to Sul Ross and rejoined the football team where he played 40 years earlier. He made NCAA history as the oldest starting linebacker. Which I got to ask: was there an older uh, football player that played a different position other than linebacker?
A couple of kickers were in
Really?
early 60s. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're the oldest linebacker. And you've written two books about that experience called The Senior and Power Based Life. And that story that we just told is also being made into a movie produced by Angel Studios that you will be able to see this fall. It comes out September 19th.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Mike, I'm excited to see this movie. I actually watched the trailer this morning and it seems very well done. But I'll let you talk more about the movie here in a minute. But at first, let's get to the big question here. Why in the world would you want to come back at age 59 and play college football?
Well, the story, the backstory in that whole process was the fact that I was going into my senior year in 1971. I was an all-conference linebacker at Sul Ross, and at that time we were the Lone Star Conference, and that was one of the premier conferences in the nation because the Lone Star Conference was fully integrated, and it wasn't until Jerry Levias broke the color barrier in '68 at SMU that the other conferences started taking on more black athletes, and we had some incredible athletes playing in the Lone Star Conference. And I was an all-conference linebacker. I had over 100 tackles my junior year. Was elected team captain by my teammates, and going into my senior year, we were picked to win the conference. We'd gone 8-3 the year before. We had everybody back, and I got kicked out of school for fighting, kicked off the team, and lost my senior year. And that team that had so much hope, so much talent, was picked to win the conference. They went 4-6-1 after I left, and I knew that those guys would play for me, and that became my greatest regret in life. I I didn't share it with anyone. I internalized the whole thing. Um, I wasn't raised in a Christian home. I That part of my life, I was not a Christian, and I lived like it. But then all those years later, after I became a strength and conditioning coach at Nebraska, Oregon, Texas A&M, I always had a philosophy about my coaching that I would never ask one of my athletes to do something that I wasn't willing to do
Mm.
myself. And so I stayed in great shape, helping other people get in shape. Well, I resigned from coaching years ago, but I always kept that mindset that I'm about 30 days away from being in really good shape. And, I tell people, I say, not every journey has to have a destination. I mean, I was doing something physically. I was running sprints, I was lifting, I was always training and working. And people would ask me, Mike, at 50 years old, why are you doing this? And I didn't have an answer other than I enjoyed it. Well, 2007 rolls around. It's been 37 years since I'd played, and I found out through happenstance. Wasn't something I was looking to do. It's just something that came up. But I found out I had a semester of eligibility left at Sul Ross, and went down, met with the head coach. I was trying to call him, but then I thought, no, I can't do this by phone. If I'm a head coach and a 59-year-old guy calls me and wants to come try out for my team, I can end that real quick. And so I went down, met with him in person. I explained to him, told him when I'd played at Permian, the kind of player I was there at Sul Ross, and the kind of player I was, and I'd been kicked out and why. And then all the places that I'd coached and what I'd done in fitness. And then I told him, I said, I'd like to walk on this team as a linebacker, because I feel like if I can make this team as a linebacker, I can help a bunch of young men that I don't even know. But for me, it makes up for those guys I let down all those years ago. And so that's basically was the motivation behind it, and that's how it started.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Mike. So you talk about how you got kicked off the team. You felt regret. You felt like you let your teammates down. You'd been named a leader on that team. And then I'm guessing that somewhere down the road, there had to be this like moment of turning or a moment of brokenness for you. Where and when was that?
Well, my dad was a World War II veteran. He was in D-Day. He turned 20 years old on the beaches of Normandy.
Wow.
Then he was in the Battle of the Bulge. Lost a leg in that, and he brought that military mindset in raising me. And there in West Texas. And when I was 6 years old, he handed me a pair of boxing gloves, and we started boxing that day. And it went on for 7 years. He called it boxing. I was pretty sure what we were doing was fighting. But anyway, he planted so many. I called it mind games. He didn't call it that. He just called it being ready. That instilled a very violent lifestyle in me when I was young, and so I never saw my dad in church. Never heard him pray. Went on in my life after I was kicked out of school and met my beautiful wife. She was going to the University of Texas, and I moved to Austin. And we started dating. She's a Longhorn fan, but we started dating, fell in love, and it was 10 years later, and there's a long story behind that, but it was 10 years later that Eileen led me to faith in Christ.
Oh, wow.
And so it was something that over that 10-year time period, before that, we'd been married, and she laid down the law. She said, our children will be raised in church, and we're going to pray together as a family. Well, I was thinking, that's okay. I'm going to go along with her. That's what she wants to do. I don't need someone dying for me. I'm a self-made man. I'm okay. I can work things out. And but God knocked me to my knees when I was 34, and I reached out to him, and my life changed.
Wow. Yeah, thank you for sharing that too, Mike. I think so many people have the experience of how they were raised, and that becomes normal. And for those who, maybe were raised by someone who's a little bit more physical, focused on the doing, the action of obedience, and maybe not necessarily strong on the love part. I mean, that factors into the way, that we respond to the rest of the world too. So what I hear from you is you were just responding to the way that you were raised by a tough war veteran, and there's a lot of value in that too. But
I've told people that my dad loved me, regardless of the things that he did, the wrong things that he did, and the things that he taught me, that God used all of that in my life, in my young life. My drive in life was to please my dad. I started working out when I was 12 years old to be bigger and stronger because my dad wanted me to be. And it ended up, when I was 22, I finally heard my dad tell me that he was proud of me. But I needed so bad to hear that, when I was 13 and 15 and 17 and, but I was still working, constantly working. But that drive, that adversity that my dad put into my life, I ended up in the fitness profession as a strength and conditioning coach at major universities because of that adversity. And so, the good that came out of it was amazing
Yeah.
and long lasting. I'm still about 30 days away from being in really good shape. I'm 77 now. So,
Man, that's pretty good, Mike. Well, it's so beautiful. What your story speaks to me is that God sends us different people in our life at different times to give us exactly what we need. And
uh,
your dad was, the firm raiser of you, and gave you those tools for, as you say, the perseverance and the toughness. And then he sent you Eileen, who I have never met. Eileen, I'm just hearing about her, but I'm guessing she very much spoke compassion into your life, and
yeah,
gave you that love, and showed you the love of the Lord.
she really did. And it was something for me that I'd reached a point in my life that I was drinking a lot and had some things happen to me that were just overwhelming. And I told her one day, I said, I think the easiest thing for me to do would be to take my pistol and go in that closet and get this over with. And she knew about my violent past, and she said, "Come on with me." And she took me by the hand. We were living in Austin at the time, out at Great Hills on the golf course, and it was closed that day. It was a Monday, and we went down on that golf course and walked and walked. And she kept quoting scripture, telling me how much Christ loved me, and began to talk about all the incredible blessings that He had poured into my life. And I didn't know for sure how, but I knew that day that things were going to be better. And but I had never. I picked up the Bible and started trying to read the Bible, and for me, it was like eating dry cereal. I mean, I'd read a page and I'd think, "What did I just read?" And then Eileen had bought a 16-volume set of encyclopedias for kids, Bible stories, for our oldest daughter. And I took the first one down, and there were pictures and all this stuff. But I understood what it was taught. I read all 16 of them. I read the whole set, and then I picked up my Bible, and it made sense to me because I could remember those
Mm,
Bible stories in those kids' encyclopedias. So
wow.
that's how my walk started with the Lord.
Yeah, very cool. Well, let's continue to follow the chronology of your life. And obviously, we're not going to tell every story, but so 10 years after you left college, you met the Lord, and He did that redemptive work in your life. And then fast forward another few decades, and you have this desire to go back and do everything over again and get a second chance at what
Right.
you missed out on in that senior year. So, walk us through that. Like, how did that decision even come about? What did it look like when you walked into that coach's office and asked him if you could try out for the team? I mean, that's
Yeah.
incredible.
Well, it was one of those things that I started getting calls about a Sil Ross reunion from the '71 team, and but it wasn't just a football reunion; it was a college reunion. But the players were calling me, and so I wasn't going to go back. There was no way because I had finally learned to manage that regret.
Mm.
But for years and years, there were times when I cried over the loss of my senior year. It meant that much to me. But I had never shared it with anyone. And I thought, you know what? I finally learned to manage this. I mean, I go back to that reunion, it's going to come up. I know it is. And I'll be back where I was before. So I'm not going. And Eileen, finally she said, I don't know what's up with you about not wanting to go to San Antonio and meet with those guys. I know you want to see them, and they want to see you. You ought to go down there and have a good time. So I did. I flew down from Franklin, Tennessee, down to San Antonio, and it was fantastic. All the football players had already congregated in one area of the lobby of the hotel where we were staying, and we were, getting caught up on everybody, where they were, what they were doing, and all that. And one of them asked me, they said, Flynt, what was it about that one fight that got you kicked out when you had so many? And I just told him, I said, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. I said, I made a lot of poor decisions when I was young. And I said, letting you guys down has become my greatest regret in life. And I said, what gets me more than anything is I still think I can play. Well, they started laughing at me, and because I was 59 at the time, and they were all laughing except for one guy, Stan. He looked at me and he said, well, why don't you? And I said, man, there's no way after 37 years I have eligibility. And he said, hey, they've changed to Division III. If you think you can take the hits, if you think you can run with those guys, if that's the greatest regret you got in life, you need to do something about it. You need to check it out.
Wow.
I couldn't think about anything else for the rest of the weekend. And so I had my linebacker coach back in the day was my go-to guy, and I'd get thrown in jail for fighting. He'd bail me out and run me half to death. He took me out on the highway one time, got me out, and he said, run. And I said, how far, Coach? He said, till I can't see you no more. And I said, Coach, this is West Texas. I don't run till dark. But, he was a rules guy. And I remember the coaches, whenever they got a question about rules or something, they'd go to Coach Florida, and he always had the answers. And so I'd stayed up with his career. I hadn't talked to him in almost 40 years. And so I called Abilene. I knew he had retired in Abilene, got a home number for him from directory assistants, called him at home. His wife answers the phone. And I said, Mrs. Lorne, this is Mike Flynt. Is Coach around? And she said, Mike Flynt, yeah. Mike, he's standing right here. Jerry, Mike Flynt's on the phone. He comes to the phone. He said, Mike, are you in jail? I said, no, Coach. I said, listen, I'm dead serious about something. I want to go back and play my senior year. I need to find out if I have eligibility. And he said, Mike, how old are you? And I said, well, I'm 59. He said, well, I think you're crazy. He said, but if you tell me you can play, I believe you. I said, Coach, I can play. So he gave me the people I needed to contact at the NCAA Rules Division, American Southwest Conference. And I found out I still had a semester of eligibility left. So then I made that trip down to Alpine, met with the head coach and freaked him out. He was totally unprepared. And then what happened next was, I tell people about that journey with no destination. He told me, he said, I got a bunch of freshmen down on the field waiting on me. He said, I should have been down there 15 minutes ago. He said, I'm going to see what kind of speed they got, what kind of shape they're in. And I said, well, can I go down there with you? And he said, yeah, sure, you can ride down. So we got out of the field. There's 13 freshmen there. And it's about 90, 95 degrees there in Alpine, Texas. We're 100 miles from Mexico. And so he told them, he said, I want you guys to get stretched out. And then I want you to pick teams. And we're going to play touch football, no patterns less than 15 yards, no walking back to the line of scrimmage. And he said, I want to see what kind of speed you have and what kind of shape you're in. And so they started getting stretched, and I said, can I join them? And he looked at the assistant head coach, and he just shrugged his shoulders, and he said, yeah. He said, you can join them. So we stretched. They picked teams. I was the last one picked. And so we lined up, and he blew the whistle, and he said, wait a minute, this is going to be total confusion. You guys on this side, you got to take your shirts off, and y'all be skins and shirts. And so I was on the skins, had to take my shirt off. So we lined up, he blew the whistle, and we ran for an hour nonstop. And he called us up, and he told me, he said, Mike, you be at my office at 9 a.m. I'll give you an answer to your question about walking on this team. And because I was there, his whole staff was there. He introduced me to everybody. And he said, you know what? He said, I had I had three questions in my mind that I had to have an answer for before I could give you an answer to your question about walking on. He said, number one, physically, could a 59-year-old man physically play college football? He said, I mean, watching you run with those kids yesterday, he said, you just blended. He said, you could run with them.
Wow.
And he said, and don't you ever take your shirt off around me again. He was 52. And he said the second thing was a reason. He said to come back and play college football at your age to jeopardize your health. He said you would have to have an incredible reason. He said, to be honest with you, I can't think of a better reason than the one you've given me to help a bunch of young men that you don't know to make up for those guys you let down all those years ago. He said the third thing was a passion, desire. He said to go through what we're going to put you through in 2-a-days to make this team, you're going to have a tremendous amount of desire. He said, but I can see it in your eyes. I can hear it in your voice. You probably got more desire than any kid we got on this team. He said, you be here August 15th. I'm going to give you a chance to make this team. That was how it started.
Wow. Mike, I was listening to that and I was thinking about the power of redemption in your story. And I was thinking about that meeting in San Antonio with those former players that you played with the first time around.
Yeah.
And wondering, it sounded like those guys had forgiven you for this. And, maybe in a way you'd even forgiven yourself. But you answered a question for me on the why you would come back. And it sounds like it really became about these young kids and about teaching them something and being a real life example of what forgiveness looks like. Am I correct on that?
That was my whole motive. That was everything about it. And in regards to your statement about sounds like my former teammates forgave me. 26 of them came back for homecoming to watch me play. And the president of the college called me and said the governor had issued me a plaque and he wanted to present that plaque before the game started. And he wanted me to be there early and be suited out, but he wanted me to be around the side. He said, because I'm going to introduce your former teammates and coaches. They don't know I'm going to introduce you. So I'm standing around the side of the stadium suited out, and he's calling out all these former players' names, and I'm sitting there listening to those names that I hadn't heard in decades. And then he called my name, and number 49 linebacker. And I started out on the field, and the whole team, all of them, turned and walked towards me, and we met in the middle of the field and just had a group hug. And one of them grabbed me and he said, Mike, we keep reading where you said that you let us down all those years ago. We never blamed you for that fight. We knew that wasn't your fault. And besides, look, because you came back to play, we're all back together again. And so God in his mercy gave me that forgiveness I needed from my former teammates to overcome that greatest regret in my life.
Wow. That's really cool. So, Mike, let me ask you this as kind of a follow-up, because I imagine there's people listening to this that maybe have something they would like to go back and revisit or do all over again. But for some people, it's not possible. Maybe a loved one has passed on that they can't speak to anymore. I mean, I'm just thinking of that as one example. Your story is pretty close to impossible, thinking that you could go back and play your sport at almost 60 years old. But what would you say to somebody who has that deep regret in their life and wishes they could go back and do it all over again, but they can't?
Well, it's for me, I was blessed in that, I knew that there was nothing I could do I couldn't change the past. The regret was there, but I could change the meaning of the past. I could go and do something right now and substitute it for that regret that I'd carried for so many years. And for me, it was making that team and helping young men to make up for those guys I'd let down all those years ago. And it's the same principle in someone's life for that person that may have passed on. There's someone else out there that needs your help, that in the name of that person that has passed on, you help them. You help that new person in that name. Substitute that that help for that person that's passed on, that regret that you have. And then doing that, you change the meaning of that regret and that past. And it's not a mind game or anything. It's actually motivation for doing what it is that you're doing. And God knows our hearts. And that's what it's all about is, what's in your heart. If it's in your heart that what you want to do to help this person is because you can no longer help that person that's passed on, but you can do this now in memory of that. And that's my motive, and God honors that.
Mm. That's beautiful. When you talk about regret, some other words that immediately come to mind for me are shame and guilt. And I think all of us at some level have experienced what that feels like to hold on to that for a long time. Tell us about how you felt when you were able to give that over, to give it away, and what would your encouragement be to others who have been holding on to shame and guilt and regret for years and years?
Well, for me, as I said earlier, there were times when I actually would cry when I was by myself because I didn't share with anybody. I didn't want to, appear weak, or emotional about something that they might think was frivolous. But to me, it was so major because of the responsibility I felt for those guys that I'd let down. And it's one of those things that in studying the Bible and learning God's word, and my family gave me this Bible over 40 years ago.
Wow.
And I took seriously what Jesus said when he said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then all these things will be added unto you." First thing in the morning, it's a priority for me that I'm in God's word. And so it's trusting him and those things. There are people out there that are doing exactly what you mentioned about beating themselves up mentally over something that they said or something that they've done that they can't go back and change. But, just move forward. And like I said earlier, not every journey has to have a destination. Do something positive, moving towards that, trusting God to channel what it is in your heart that needs to happen for you to have that peace. But he gets the glory. He gets the honor and the praise. It's not something that you said, okay, I'm going to go do this, but you do everything that you can, that you believe that he would have you do, even if it's only increasing in your knowledge of him, studying God's word, being open to leads in his life, that all of a sudden you realize that you're there, that now you have this opportunity. And it's happened because you are moving forward.
Mike, as you were talking, I was thinking about a story that relates to this in the Bible. And for me, it became incredibly meaningful as I was going through my career, the first few decades of my life. But it talked about when the temple was being built in the Old Testament times, and they would quarry these stones in a far off location and bring them in to the temple site, which was a holy site. And there could be no hammering or noise going on at the holy site because it was holy. And so they had to chip away at these stones that they quarried in the distance, and they had to bring them in and fit perfectly. And so the picture for us is that this life is our quarry, and that God continues to chip away at us, chip away at our selfishness, at our earthly desires, our flesh, all of the things that he wants to get rid of and make us more holy, make us more prepared for that holy site that we will one day go to, which is, of course, is heaven, and we will fit perfectly because of the chiseling and quarrying that's been done ahead of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, it's that, it's those baby steps that, as long as you're making progress, as long as you're moving forward, in fitness, I tell people about, from a fitness standpoint, the greatest exercise program in the world, bar none, is the one you'll do. Because if you won't do it, it doesn't matter how many science you've got, testimonials, all that doesn't matter. And, I tell people to look at things and determine what they'll do. But I tell them, there's such a thing in fitness, what I call prison cell fitness. You take 3 steps, turn, take 3 steps, turn. If you're confined somewhere and you think, well, I can't get out and exercise. Yeah, you can. You take those baby steps, but you're moving forward, just like you're talking about with chipping those stones.
Yeah, that's good. Well, Mike, we're not going to destroy the ending of the movie. I'm really excited to see what did that look like the first time you set foot back on the field at age 59, and what happened as a result of your influence and being on that team. But we'll save that for the movie. And again, folks, you can go see that on September 19th. Is it on Amazon, or how can we get it?
No, it's they're going to be in over 2,000 theaters nationwide.
Oh, wow.
That's right now. It could grow from that, but it's a major theatrical release that is going out in theaters all across the nation. So
fantastic.
We'll see where it goes.
We'll look for that, and I'm excited to see it. Maybe take my kids to it as well.
Oh, they'll love it. It's PG. There is no language. In my contract, I told them, I said there can be no use of the Lord's name in vain, or the name of Jesus can't be used in a disrespectful manner, and they honored that. So, but there is no language. It's PG, and it's great football.
Yeah. Well, let me invite you to just give this assessment of the film. Do you feel that it did honor your story and honor God in that story?
I believe that it did. We didn't want it to be a Christian movie from a standpoint of we didn't want to, isolate the film, but we wanted to make it enjoyable for Christian families that just live life like everybody else does. And that's what they've done. And it's just, it's a great look at redemption, at second chances in life, at overcoming regret, chasing your dreams, all of those things that, in relationships, the relationship between myself at age 59 and those 18, 19-year-old guys, it was priceless. It was just amazing.
Yeah.
And, I want to make one quick comment.
Sure.
About that whole experience. I was a good football player when I was young. I was a very good football player. But when I went back, I'd never played football in a 59-year-old body before. And the recovery time, I mean, it was just, I didn't think there was going to be enough ice in Alpine, Texas. But the thing about it for me is I've always been a big fan of time travel movies. Somewhere in Time, Back to the Future, that concept has just always fascinated me. That's what it was like. Being back on that field that I'd been on 37 years before, same field, wearing all my equipment. There's no mirrors for me to see the wrinkles. And I'm out there doing everything that my teammates are doing. We're going through all the drills. We're tackling, we're running, we're jumping, we're doing all this stuff. It was just like stepping back in time. But I knew this time how fast that it was going to go by. I knew that I was going to turn around and it was going to be over. And I didn't waste 1 second of it. Through all the pain, through all the hard work, through all the disappointment at times, I didn't waste any of it. I just embraced every second of it. And we hear people talking about, well, we're running out of time. It's never we're walking out of time or we're jogging out of time. It's always we're running out of time. Time is our greatest asset. And so, no matter what people are going through in their lives, where they are right now, don't let it rob you of the blessings in your life and the time that you have. You got to maximize it.
Yeah, that's a great message, Mike. I love that. Don't waste today, and don't be afraid to get back out there and think it's too late.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mike, as we conclude our interview here, I would just love to go back to Eileen. and talk about your relationship with her. You've been married for over 50 years now. How did this experience strengthen your marriage and both of your relationship with God?
Well, it was, one of those things initially that Eileen was just humoring me. She wasn't taking me serious when I was checking with the NCAA. Our youngest daughter just left for college, and so we're empty nesters, and we put the house on the market and immediately had a contract. So she's out looking at houses, and she's just leaving me alone, figuring the coach is going to tell me I'm crazy or NCAA is going to say, no, there's no way. And I come back and she had a list of houses for us to go look at. And I said, Eileen, we're going back to college. We're going down to Texas. And I said, coach is going to give me a chance to make the team. And she said, I cannot believe at 59 years old that you want to go back and try to play college football. I feel like I'm married to Peter Pan. And then I realized I had never shared with her the depth of the regret in my life. And I told her, I said, I've lived over half my life with the regret over a mistake that I made. And now coach is going to give me a chance to possibly rewrite that last chapter in my athletic career. And I may not make the team, but I've got to try. For me to have the chance and not try would be worse than getting kicked out the first time. And so I've got to go try. And then in her unselfish love, she said, hey, if the shoe were on the other foot, you'd do it for me. She said, let's go play football.
Wow.
And that was my first phone call when I got to the locker every practice. Hey, honey, I'm okay. I'll be home a little bit. But her support, her prayer, because if Eileen had said at that point, Michael, you can't go do this. You just can't do this. We can't. I don't go back to play. I'm just not going to do it. But she supported me. She knew how important it was to me. She was ready for us to sell our house, move to Alpine, and into the total unknown because of her devotion and love for me. And she told me, she said, this is going to be a great adventure. And it was. And so, but our faith, it grew leaps and bounds, because whenever you're constantly depending on God, I guess it's like a race car driver or someone else that's out there every day putting themselves in that arena where that serious injury can happen. That's where it was with me at my age, every day out there butting heads with those young guys. So it was an opportunity to grow in our faith, and we embraced it.
Yeah. Mike, you've got a beautiful story. I can't wait to see the movie, The 59-Year-Old Rudy, as it's described in the movie. It's going to be a great show. Folks, go check out The Senior and hear Mike's story. Mike, it's been a real blessing to be on the show here with you and have you tell your story about how God has used this amazing story to help you redefine purpose in your life and to serve others. And so thank you for telling that.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the questions you've asked me that's allowed me to share those parts of my story with you. And I hope everyone does go see The Senior. You will love the movie.
Absolutely. God bless you, Mike.
God bless you. Thank you.